Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Cosmonarchy BW Castover, an AI Castover no less. I'm Pronogo, and today we'll be taking a look at Balefal's birthday map, Favored Fiction. As you can see, my account name is a head bandage emoji, because, head bandage describes what I just went through, and what I have gone through in the realm of Brood War modding. But suffice it to say, this should be relatively operational. We'll take a look at it. This is actually a pre-release version. There's some stuff that is yet to occur. And I've been doing some exhaustive testing and editing and AI hand-holding. So yeah. Also, shout out to this screen here. You won't be seeing that particular one for very long because DF has been hard at work on a Photoshop script that will assist greatly in the eventual discovery of, or the process of porting other assets to the game. PCX files and palettes with fonts and stuff like that it's just very finicky. So unfortunately, you need a lot of very granular work and details taken care of. And speaking of granular, we can get quite granular when we're looking at this particular player. So first I'll give you a lay of the land, as is customary with the maps and the castovers. So down here is the human player slot. This is who Bethrilethal is. So you get to pick your race. In this case, the AI is randomed, and they wound up being Terran. It's one of the few times I've ever seen Terran on this map, so that'll be interesting, at least from that perspective, obviously. Then we have Crypto Carl, who's the homie. He's always Protoss, and he always goes air. You'll notice that a common trend here is that one player will begin with more than one base, more than one town center, and two gases on the other town center. And so that's something that I tried to have happen every single time. I think it's kind of an interesting thing to do, but obviously I was after some element of parity, where each area of the map would have more or less the same level of potency as resources and defensive layouts and stuff were taken care of. So because I wanted some element of consistency between all of the teams, I figured each one of them could have one player with that setup. I certainly could have made the starting assets more asymmetric, but I chose not to in this particular case. Initial expansions are being thrown down, and it's this point that I can take to remind you guys that the base layout thing requires a lot of handholding. I don't know if you knew that, but you need to do a lot of very particular work to get the AI to build reasonable layouts. So right now, the only AI that has those hooked up is, in fact, this Yulin player. We haven't gotten to him yet, but that's the reason why I keep looking at him, is to take stock of what's going on. Everything else you see is it's the AI doing AI things. Speaking of which, we have the bottom force here in the bottom left-hand corner. These are the Void Speakers. So we've got Void Speaker, I believe it's 1 and 2, but yeah, okay. So the purple one is the first Void Speaker, and the, whatever this color is, Dark Coral is the other Void Speaker. Dark, of course. Classic. So these guys are randomly selected. It's probably the thing that took the most amount of effort so far in this particular map's development, is getting these things to work correctly, because it's not just that the Void Speakers themselves have gameplay elements to them, where if you see a specific player, then you should be expectant of specific strategies. It's also that they have different dialogues, right? So hooking up the system that changed their personalities depending on what I wanted their sort of playstyles to be wasn't actually that much work. It was more work than it really needed to be, or ought to have been, but that's just because it's in Brood War. In this particular case, the biggest issue was designing triggers that would, if then else, basically simulating an if then else system without actually being able to do that. So it was quite a lot of effort to make something like that happen. This is by the looks of it, a very greedy player, considering he's just been drolling up for quite a while now. We don't see any action just yet, but the first couple of forces are moving up from our Dark Coral player, heading over to Yulin, which is now my opportunity to introduce him. Yulin and his dog... It'll make sense if you play it. His dog likes to spam cohorts, which is pretty funny. And then he's over here expanding into the back line. He's got his bunkers, or at least a bunker that he's having built. Words, English language. We've got a couple starports being thrown down as well, which is... interesting. He's mostly a greedy mech-oriented player. The starports, you'll notice, mostly going to be focused around control towers so that he can get Seraphs and Azazels for the sake of defending and disrupting enemy forces. Speaking of enemy forces, we do indeed have some things occurring. Not really a whole lot to write home about over here on the player's side of things. He's got a scrapyard on the way, so that's cool, I guess. A couple scrapyards, in fact. This looks like maybe a general player. He's got a little bit of everything. Meanwhile, a bit of a joint attack. The Droleths have sacrificed themselves to clear out the ground units, but there are more coming, and definitely a need for additional defenders. So the Cyclops are coming down from the ally. Oof. He's actually done an okay job with his static defense over here, which is nice. Looks like he was even in the process of spreading it out a little bit more. And this dog scales pretty heavily, actually. So hopefully he's got some cohorts on the way. Because, ironically enough, the Cyclops are simply not enough to cleanse this area, which is pretty funny. Love to see kills on workers. We got some air units, we got some Southpaws. That means some Phalanxes should be on the way as well, but you never know with AI. Generally speaking, I am pretty happy with how aggressively the AI tend to expand. And this team free-for-all situation means that even if it looks kind of rough for the top team, the fact that the other two players on the right here, they haven't met the Void Speakers yet, they haven't started fighting them, it means that it could turn on a dime, change pretty easily, actually. This also serves to be a nice little test run for the new build order that I've got for this guy. Although, oddly enough, even though I set a specific expansion schedule for the Zerg player, he gets this as his natural and this as his third, but for some reason he always takes this base, even though he's explicitly told to take a base in the corner over there, which hasn't been revealed yet. It's kind of weird that it takes so much annoying debugging and trial and error to figure out what the errors are inside AI scripts. It's something that I'm very much looking forward to not having to deal with in the new engine, which is operational pretty soon, actually, for this sort of thing. In fact, you may see AI castovers sooner than you think inside inside the new engine, which is going to be pretty exciting. Looks like this is still a hotbed of activity. If we scroll back over to the player, the Bethrelethal player, he's actually got a lot of, basically a lot of Tier 1 production structures. He's only now ascending to Tier 2, and he's still on 2 bases. So that's actually a pretty scary build in the early game, but it can fall off pretty easily if you have the right number of units on the other end. The Excitralisks and cohorts should make a pretty formidable ground force here, and the Void Speakers shouldn't be able to progress too much farther. Excitralisks are very, very potent in general. I did recently make adjustments to their... generally reducing their efficacy and their vitals. I think I slightly reduced their attack speed, in addition to adjusting the shields and health. One of the shields, or health. I'm not sure which one exactly. And here we have a lovely frozen creep. We love that. That's probably a bug that's due to when the players try to build a hatchery here while the creep is still on the ground, and then the hatchery is destroyed before it's finished. It probably creates this, it probably just doesn't remove the creep underneath it or something. So basically, we just need to add the creep removal check to when buildings are not fully finished. Hopefully that's not that big of a deal. We do have a Vethrilisk, which is pretty spooky. That Goliath was pretty confused. I would be too. If I saw an enemy using a Vethrilisk, I'd be like, what the fuck? You can't use that unit. Speaking of not being able to use that unit, we do have some Excitralisks on the field for the other player, the Void Speaker Zerg. Pretty spooky. I'm trying to spot the source of all the sound effects. It looks like it's just general fighting going on. This base being taken by Void Speakers is actually pretty spooky, because especially with this pretty reasonable force from Crypto Carl pushing into us, his expansion. I'll just say dog's expansion. I can't say every time. Especially with this happening, It's actually quite spooky to see that. You definitely want to be on the lookout for such activities. Right now, unfortunately, our top team here, the 3%, have been getting owned pretty heavily. And their whole base is on fire. And they have a nuclear silo. That's spooky. He built the treasury that doesn't have any depots near it instead of the treasury that would also have depots. This is a classic. He's trying to build a science facility. At least that's going to be on the way soon, so he can get onto his end game tech. But it might be a while, actually. I mean, maybe it will be never if he can't defend against the onslaught of calculisks. It doesn't help that there's like a single charlatan that's cloned itself with the hallucination. It's just making this attack force much more annoying and potentially deadly than it would be normally. Get him, Masons. Well, what a mess. If you had to ask me who was going to win this particular engagement, I'd probably say the Void Speakers. The Void Speakers have random races and obviously random characters. So they have the most variance between, compared to anything else in the game. So their role, plus how the rest of the AI interact with each other, the other two teams, is going to massively influence the outcome of the game at the end of the day. It's one of the reasons why the map ends up being as replayable as it does. So I'm pretty happy with how that experiment went. Yeah, just put acid spores, corrosive spores on the factory. That's a classic. It's actually a really deadly combination with calculisks because they have such low base damage, but if the armor gets driven down, then that can obviously be quite potent. And Vithrilisks take so long to kill for Nathricors that you basically just can't use them as a combination. See? The AI proving that Vithrilisks can be meta. Who would have guessed? I certainly wouldn't have. The Void Speakers have begun to turn set their sights onto the Crypto Carls of the world. Although, at this point, the dog is actually doing okay. And surprisingly enough, there is indeed a science facility, and there are indeed some nanite assemblies going down, so maybe the 3% aren't out of the woods just yet. I think it's purely based on the fact that we actually may have, the dog sort of hard carrying at this point. Just if he can fend off and he can stay alive long enough for the Void Speakers to start getting a little bit more slowed down by the presence of the player forces, right? Crypto Carl and Bethrilethal. These could be the champions that allow this free-for-all to go on for another, 20 minutes or so, depending on how things go. We can get properly warmed up. I could take a sip of water. Something I've been trying to stress a little bit more recently is sounds. But we're so close to the full limit of how many sound files I can point to in sfxdata.tbl, which is sort of like, it's basically a lookup table for the game to find the file paths of sound assets. So if I add a new sound to the game, I need a reference to it in that file. And we're getting pretty close to the 65 kilobyte limit of how large the file can actually be, which is pretty unfortunate because it basically means that I can't add... I can add sounds to the game, but I can't actually find them. So either we need to extend that, which is really difficult as it turns out, or we need to find a way to implement a system that doesn't actually require that, and so like a parallel system for loading sounds past a certain limit, which would basically sidestep the need for sfxdata.tbl entirely, at least for new things. However, I don't think either of those are really on the cards because we're focusing a lot more heavily on the Antikythera engine, where we don't have any of those stupid arbitrary limits that just slow us down. So I'm personally looking forward to just, making stuff in a new engine and not having to deal with this. But, yeah. For someone who spends so much time within Brood War, I have to say, this does feel very heavily, like, it smacks a lot of, like, the limitations, right? There's, like, the palette limitations on all the graphics. There's the fact that I have selected a bunch of custom portraits, which aren't really that high quality. They're all placeholders, just like all of the custom unit graphics are. But they're at least not the same graphic as all of the other things. Like, I don't think Quasilisks are on this map, but they have the same portrait as the Droleth. And that's an obvious case where it's like, if I wanted to just look at that portrait, I wouldn't be able to know that, oh, actually that's, you know, this unit. I would have to be like, oh, that's like one of 6 units that uses that portrait or whatever. So that's like another classic example. It just feels pretty bad to like have the assets in the case of sounds and portraits and not be able to actually add them. And the same is true for concepts. Like I can't add more unit concepts to the game because we're close to a unit limit. At this point, I've just given up on even bothering to do that in the first place because I can't even add new sounds to the game to have it for their reads and their weapons, give them a unique experience, audio experience. So it feels really, really bad to be put into that situation. Not as bad as Yulin probably feels with all of these infantry units in his base. Hey, if they blow that missile silo up, they're all gonna get nuked. Do it. Do it, pussy. You've got... He's got... Actually, this is totally legit if he does this, because he's already got the thing. Here it comes. He's got the revive, so it doesn't even matter. Although they all revived inside the radiation zone, so... maybe it does matter. That's brutal. Too bad they don't have any avoidance yet. They don't have any concept of danger or threat, so... Amazing. So that was pretty rough. Tactical bombing of his own base. You know, I guess when you're made of money like the 3% are, you can afford to do stuff like that. There's a lot of fucking Vitrilisks, dude. They're just hanging. Some of these might be charlataned, but I can't really tell. It doesn't look like it, though. I think the hallucination units are usually given the Broodling Suicide script, which isn't really a Broodling script. It's just a script that's given to Broodspawn. But hey, we've got Iron Foundries, we've got Nanite Assemblies. It's funny that the AI that has had the most handholding is also the one that just got fucked the most. That's partially due to the randomness, the luck of the draw of the Void Speakers. It's also partially due to the fact that we have... I'm still in the process of testing and verifying the strength of the AI build orders in the first place. Or of this particular AI's build order. Plus, there's this whole thing where the Zerg are trying to establish a presence here, even though they shouldn't be. I do like the attempt at proxying. He should probably be putting it closer to friendly units, but it probably wouldn't matter. There's a Quasilisk. You can see the Droleth portrait, since I was just talking about that earlier. Despite all of its limitations, the Brood War platform still gave birth to this, alongside all of my hard work and Veek's hard work and, you know, DF and many other people who I just won't even bother trying to remember the names of at this moment, but there's a lot of people who contributed to this project and the tools that this project uses. And so looking at it in this sort of retrospective way, where it is what it is, and you're not really going to be able to massively overhaul it into something else. You get to see AI that kite their units. You get to see AI that expand and are aggressive. You get to see massively distinct tech trees with, you know, hundreds of options potentially, depending on if you're playing a team game or not. You get to see terrain adjustments and enhancements that allow you to make much more varied environments and have consistent visual cues. And yeah, there are some obvious issues with the blending and stuff that needs to be resolved. Another critical example of that was the dirt snow blend thing that I did for this particular map. I never wound up... I didn't have time to really sink in a lot of hours into it, and even if I had, can't guarantee that it would have been any good. But despite all of that, it's still a pretty nice sort of send-off in a way, where it's like, okay, well, if I want to make something that is significantly improved compared to this, I can't really look to Brood War for it. I really have to go somewhere else. I have to do other things. Oh shit. Dude, we've got sirens. The AI knows how to use the multi-attack thing too. This could be the start of a snowball effect. Something that you'll see a lot with this AI is that because it can't adapt, anything that seems like an adaptation is just by chance. So, as a result of that, it actually wouldn't surprise me if like one unit finally comes online, and then you suddenly see like a ridiculous snowball effect because they can't respond to it. We've actually seen the Void Speakers lose that outpost over there, although maybe not fully, considering the reinforcement wave of fucking Vithrilisks that just showed up. Dude, the fucking Vithrilis count, man. I've never seen so many Vithrilisks in my life. That's amazing. I guess this is the AI's way of saying you're grounded. Yeah, here we go, buddy. I see you have an air unit there. Let me fix that real quick. They're just roving through the entire map, erasing air units. If you have the capital to spend on Vithrilisks, I guess that would be a good bit. Just walk around and, like, A-move all of the Ovoleths in existence. Amazing. At least this creep finally got removed because the hatchery finally finished and then was destroyed again. Truly incredible stuff. Alright, well, it looks like good old 3%ers are out. Now the only question is, can anybody stop the Vithrilisk spam? And I'm not sure that anybody can. Even with a lot of ground units. I do like the frontlining blackjacks. I liked that maybe 10 minutes ago, but 20 minutes in you probably want to have, like, I don't know, a million sirens instead. If you're gonna go scrapyard anyway. This liftoff bug is one of the most infuriating things in the whole game for me. This is amazing, and I'm glad that I saw it. Fucking Happy New Year, asshole. Please lift the building off, AI. I take back what I said. Lift off that... Make that liftoff bug happen, dude. That's incredible. The dog really tried his hardest, but at the end of the day, he just gets owned. The protests only have 3 bases, and they're not even really building a lot of production facilities. That's kind of interesting. Do they even have an Argosy? Yeah, this guy probably needs a lot of build order or hand-holding, I think, based on what I'm seeing here. But again, the only custom build order in the whole game that's like scenario-specific right now is the Terran, the green Terran. And we saw how well it worked out for him. Mostly because it is intended to be a bit of a greedy build where he expands prior to getting that much tech. And then he tries to get like a 3rd base pretty soon. The problem is that the 3rd base got interrupted by the Zerg taking it, which isn't a specification. I don't know why that bug happens. And then we obviously had some other issues downstream of that where they just kept getting owned by the Void Speakers. And I kind of had a natural result. Like, the Void Speakers could have been threatened earlier. If, I don't know, I'm trying to remember what that sound effect that we just heard was. What was that sound effect? Oh, actually, that's just that's a bug that I forgot to fix from earlier. I added a ready sound for the idle, and it's right next to some new Goliath anti-air missile launches, and I have the wrong range of sounds being played, so it will occasionally play when the Goliath attacks, which is pretty funny. Pretty map crappy, TBH. I'll fix that later. But yeah, aside from those minor issues, holy fucking aspirant, dude. I need at least 3 aspirants for every Vithrilisk. Dude, he's going for it. A war fought on 2 fronts, and both of them are against the Void Speakers. But yeah, we could have maybe seen more Void Speaker threatening had we been in a situation where these guys did some early action. The problem is that Crypto Carl did his early action against the dog, and then the 3 Lethal just didn't do early action, really. Or if he did, it was not very effective. Even now, he's not going very far. This is a pretty big battle. It's pretty cool to see. He didn't go very far, though. He did a little bit more damage over here, but it's mostly just casualties. It's mostly just killing units. That's a bit more impactful, I think, for the Terran player, since he's shutting down the economy of the space. But at this point, the biggest threat is definitely the Void Speaker Zerg. He's like the single most powerful the single most powerful player in the game currently. Oh, I was kind of confused. I thought those were Crypto Carls. I was wondering how we got cohorts, but those are actually the 3 Lethals. This base is pretty ripe for the taking, though, if Crypto Carl decides to send some exemplars down, maybe. Not going to happen by the looks of things. That Art Anus portrait is firmly affixed on a dog. Artanis kind of looks like a dog, don't you think? Can I find an Artanis? No, it's fucking Scout. Idiot. Here we go. Just look at him. He's like a dog that has some hair painted on. That Vithrilisk had revive, I think. Eviscerated. At least this base is open now. Maybe we'll see somebody take it. Actually, a large number of bases are open, and of course the Void Speaker is the Zerg player. The Void Speaker Zerg is the player to go for it, right? That makes the most sense. He's the one who's been carrying. When this force finally careens into the Protoss, I have a feeling that good old Crypto Carl will not be successful. At least he's finally setting his sights on assisting, this is a good meme, with uprooting the Terrans more formally from this area. Something that does tend to happen with the AI in Cosmonarchy Brood War is that after like 4 or 5 expansion attempts, they just stop expanding. I don't think that's the problem with the code though, like the code that I've written as part of the AI script. I think it's more of an issue of like priorities, where they're attempting to like... Jesus. He really doesn't like the Apostle, but that's not his main target here. Or shouldn't be. There we go. He figured it out. I just like watching the AI attempt to micro. It's always fun. But yeah, I think it's more of an issue where like they never have the money, or if they even if they do have the money, they don't have like the priority clearance. It's actually really annoying how bad the AI is at recycling requests, even with Knave's request recycler. If the requests are in even in priority, they will never be recycled or picked or whatever, which is pretty stupid. But I don't even know if that's something that he did wrong or if it's just some other limitation that's like a collision between his work and the built-in programming that nobody has any control over. I was about to say that I can't believe that nobody's been able to destroy the space yet, but I can believe that, actually. Fuck him up! Always cool to see the other player get some benefit from the revive. Sort of like when you get you benefit from your ally's charlatan or something. There's something about that where you've conferred a very powerful bonus to your allies' units that feels very different and very distinct. Like it feels very much like a Cosmonarchy Brood War mechanic when something happens that's ally-based. Alright, well, it took about, you know, say 20-25 minutes for the top team to fully fall. The question is, what happens now? And I think I know the answer. Oh shit. I sense a soul in search of Zerg here. And it's me. Imagine getting attacked and like most of the enemies just being hallucinations and you like fucking lose your shit. You're like, oh my god, they're attacking me. And like that was just the first wave. And then the real swarm of Zerg here shows up. I'd say at least half of those were hallucinations, which is pretty amazing. There's a lot of units. Yeah, I'd be pretty terrified if I were the 3 Lethal. I think a large portion of this, of the reason why the human team doesn't end up feeling very competitive this particular run is because Crypto Carl doesn't end up feeling very useful. I mean, he's got a lot of air units and Stargates and stuff, but he hasn't ascended beyond that to the Argosy tech, right? That's probably the biggest issue. I'm not sure where his script got hung up on specifically. It is a consistent script, so I can always go back and look at it afterwards. The high ground advantage. Cohort v cohort. Brutalized. Unfortunately, his own salamander did a decent chunk of damage to him, I think. There's a little bit of a pathfinding stutter now. That tells you that a large army was just ordered to move. And if you could see that, just look at the minimap, bro. This is the first wave. A glorious sight to behold. Praise be unto Amon, Lord and bringer of butter. Holy shit. Pathfinding lag is pretty intense, actually. This is at least 200 units, I think. They're trying to spin over here. Oh, evacuate the scrapyard! They tried to lift off every single scrapyard to build a single add-on, and they just couldn't. Meanwhile, when they get to this area, they'll finally have something to look at. Well, I think we know who wins this one, huh, boys? See what we can soak in on. Take a screenshot to remember the year of our Lord 2021. Yeah, I guess this is about par for the course, right? Zerg macroing and annihilating with giant swarms of units. That's what we've come to expect by now. Although that was pretty amazing. I did not expect a scribe using a shaman to execute a Hydralisk hallucination. Fuck him up! What the fuck? Oh, man. The joys of emergent gameplay. Things you would never expect in your own product. I hope you guys have enjoyed 2021. I know it's been a crazy year and a lot of shit happened and not all of it was good. But I gotta say, I'm very excited for 2022. I'm very excited for where things are gonna go. It's a feel-good year, even though we didn't necessarily release something demonstrably high quality or anything, right? Like, we have this mod, which is very flawed. It has a lot of very obvious issues that are very difficult to, if not impossible to fix due to the codebase being closed source, and perhaps also due to our own inadequacies as developers. But Veek and I are going boldly where few men have gone before and releasing our own engine. Well, maybe not releasing it, but we're making our own engine so that we can then release our own products. And development on that has been really nice, really exciting. I'm very much looking forward to showing some of that off, and you can bet your ass that when we have all of the systems operational and we have AI added and some maps to look at, I'll be doing some AI castovers inside Antikythera. I don't know what they'll be called, because they won't be Cosmonarchy Brood War AI castovers anymore, since it'll be our own engine. I guess it'll just be Antikythera AI castover. It's kind of vague, but that's fine. So thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being along for the ride, guys. Like I said, a feel-good year of sorts, at least as far as closing out the year goes. I feel good about how things have gone and where things are going, mostly. Not just happy, but satisfied. Not just confident, but it's almost like inevitable. It feels inevitable that we produce something very high quality. All of the parts are there. All of the pieces are involved. And we even get to see DF's latest work on the particles over here. Nice boy. One final shot. The 21-gun salute. The 21-ton gun salute. Considering it's the ion cannon. See you later, homies. Oh, that would have been a lot more topical if it had actually been the end of the game. But unfortunately, there are still some more things. Zerg here. I think we can close it out there. It's been real. This castover brought to you by Kian, who requested that I do an end-of-the-year castover. So I hope you guys enjoyed. It was a bit rough, and it was not a very bug-free map, or bug-free run, for that matter. But hey, we didn't crash, and the game lasted for 35 minutes or so, so that's pretty cool. A lot of units. A lot of Zerg here. Fuck those spider mines, guys. And enjoy this scenic view of water. Wait, let me find a better scenic view. There you go. Far away from the corners of the earth, where you get to see some masons harvesting resources. A couple of air units occasionally flying by. You know, you could almost forget that there was a whole battle fought for this particular area, in fact. Almost.